I'm sure all of us seated over here, no matter the AI, no matter the technology, we're all big fans of the world of storytelling. But that being said, markets are increasingly influenced by perception, and narrative has become strategic capital. So we get to see how brands shape their story effectively, and they are the ones that gain advantage before product maturity. So we'll have this session that examines how narrative building influences market positioning, and also we'll get the session to explore the role of creators as cultural intermediaries. So let's get to do that by bringing on board three incredible speakers who in fact are, I would say in a way, the custodians of how marketing is more of a meaning than just mere messaging. Once again, the session will be spearheaded by Lavanya Iyengar, Deputy Chief Editor, ET Edge. So that being said, the stage is set. Lavanya, you're also ready, and I know our speakers are all set, so let me quickly invite, first up, we have the brand and business strategist, Harish Bajur. I'd like to also please invite Rohit Ori, founder Original, and Stefano Falhalla, founder and CEO, Podio Lebanon. I'd like to invite all our three speakers, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Okay, we're talking about branding, okay? And this time we thought, let's wake the room up, okay? We found how the room was responding to robots, and we thought, okay, we'll get human into the place, and we'll say how human are going to wake up the room, okay? We're going to let the cat among the pigeons and ask interesting, controversial questions. Here we go, okay? See, marketing is long thought to be something which was sales. Okay, and then we said, okay, marketing is in, let's become marketing, and then we had branding, and then we say we'll give you a budget, unlimited budget, then the ROI was also fixed out there. Okay, now it's come to marketing now has to come as story. Okay, so we start with once upon a time, long ago, there was once a prince, a princess. Is this how it goes? We talk about all the 7 sins and try to explore the human behavior. We try to do greed, we try to do FOMO, we say if you miss out on things, I'm very sure many of you who are exiting room are surely missing out on something from this session. So we create all this and we bring it to the table, and that's what marketing is trying to push and then pull out. Over to you. Am I right?
Okay.
Or we beg to differ.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, marketing has changed over the years. Once upon a time, it was all about selling, and then it was about marketing, and then it was about branding, and then it became about financing, because, you know, at the back end, the kind of efficiencies that financing could bring to the party differentiated the ability of a company to make a success or turn out to be a failure. But I'd just like to say, if there is a prince and a princess, there needs to be a rose for sure today, because this is Valentine's Day. You can't do without it. But let me define a brand. You know, from my sense and sensibility, yes. I would say, I mean, the definition of a brand in my head, and this is the title of my book as well, the brand is a thought. The brand is a thought. Nothing more, nothing less. But a thought is very simple. Every mind has a thought. The GBS is a thought. That thought is in each one of your heads. But the complexity of it is the fact that as many minds in this audience, that many different thoughts of the same brand. And therefore, I tend to say that brand has ceased to be a physicality long ago. And Rohit will testify to it for sure from his space. Brands are not physical entities at all. The brand is a non-physical entity. So a quick story. I was in Berlin, some months ago, speaking to a bunch of professors, talking about a new theory which I had put together for 90 minutes. At the end of it, a lady puts up her hand and says, Mr. Bajur, you speak so much about brands in English. Can you use a Sanskrit word and tell me what a brand is? Why Sanskrit? Because Germany is the capital of Sanskrit. There are a larger number of papers published out of Germany than India. Number of Sanskrit scholars in Germany larger than the numbers in India today, even though we're such a big country. And then I look and scratch my head, and she asked me, use a Sanskrit word to describe a brand. So I say, ma'am, brand is Maya. Maya. Okay? It is here and it is not here. Do you get that? So That's the definition. I came back and wrote a paper on it. This is what we do. You latch onto a word, hashtag Maya, and write a paper. Why? Because that is the truth. Because the brand is not a physicality. The brand is a metaphysicality. Brand is not physical. It's a metaphysicality.
I got the hashtag. Over to you, Rohit.
Lavanya, do you have a specific question?
Yeah, my question to you, we were talking earlier about, taking on the discussion from where, Harish left us. We will talk about, is the attention deficiency that we were talking about, okay? That is not an attention grabbing, right? Let's take on that.
So, this is something which is, I've heard a lot of, and especially in marketing and in client boardrooms, really about this new generation being attention deficit. And if you look around in this room, I would say that, you have a lot of people talking, a lot of people having coffee at the back, people on their phones, people answering calls. So are you going to say that this is about attention deficiency? And everyone says that in 8 seconds you have to get your message, brand message across. Because in the first 3 seconds, if you don't catch the consumer, you've lost the person forever. And I think that's the biggest myth. It's a myth created by lazy marketeers. Because it is not an attention deficit scenario. It's really a meaning deficit scenario. And if there is meaning, there will be attention. People are still watching 10-hour series in one sitting, right? So they sit and binge watch, right? Or they're watching 3-hour podcasts, or they're in Wikipedia rabbit holes for hours. Why is that happening, right? Because they find meaning in that, and that finding that meaning is really the most important thing. And my point on this is that where does that meaning come from? The traditional way of thinking about it is brands as broadcasters, saying, I will broadcast the meaning to consumers. The new way of looking at it is what is the most important thing now is brands need to create narrative frameworks and put it in front of consumers, and consumers need to find their meaning, right? Once they find the meaning, then you find a new resonance in that brand. That brand has life. And like Harish was saying, it then transcends the physical form and gets into, being an identity. It almost becomes the identity of the user, because I have completed this brand story. So I'll give you an example. Like, for instance, if you take one of the most iconic brand, I would say, if you now view it from this lens, brand framework or a structure, it is Just Do It, right? Just Do It is an incomplete narrative, right? It does not say do what. And because I can use it in so many different ways, I, as a consumer, am almost co-authoring that brand thinking and that brand philosophy, and that kind of integrates my identity with the brand, makes the brand something more than just, a tagline or words, because it then becomes, one with my identity, and that creates what I call an emotional moat. And that emotional moat is very hard for competitors to actually, bridge or go over. That, I think, is the most important thing. Is really today, you need to create those narratives which help brands really get co-authorship from their consumers. So you don't want another consumer, you want a co-author of that story. And that then becomes, the new world of building brands.
I got it, Rohit. Now, Stefano, I take this discussion out to you. Okay, I ask you that. He said lazy marketers are not letting it go. The room shouldn't let it go if you have marketers in place. Okay, let's take it out. In this age of constant scrolling, do you think listening has emerged as one of the most few spaces of sustained attention and trust? You can ask the room, are they listening, of course?
Listen, I think all the points that have been said here really resonate and bring all of this to a circle, right? And if we look at the last couple of years specifically, we live in a world that I like to call the attention economy. It's no longer the creator economy, it's the attention economy. And second of all, it's the narrative economy. Because your end channel today is no longer the source, the end channel is the user. That's who you're selling to. The person is the end person, and regardless of which channel you're reaching them, you're targeting at the end of the day us, humans. And so if you have a narrative that resonates with a community, this is how you win. So you have to look at it less from a perspective of how do you get to them, but what's the most effective way you can reach them. And what fascinates me is that even in this world of quick few second scrolls, you have people that still spend hours listening and consuming, right? Be it on streaming or like Rohit said, it's like they're spending hours consuming content. And so that brings us to a next step of our conversation is that if these people are consuming hours of content, and specifically in podcasts, right? And what we've seen in our region, the Middle East and North Africa, and before we tap into that market as well, tens of millions of listeners that consume podcasts powered by Podio. We look at them and we see that these are strong communities. And so these are communities that resonate with the narrative that creators are pushing, and these are communities that will purchase whatever product is being sold to them because they're convinced with it. And they're convinced with it because there's trust, and trust is built through narratives and through storytelling and through all of what we just said.
Okay. Arish, you wanted to...
Yeah, I think the hashtag is narratives. And I think if you folks are at the GBS today, it's extremely important for us to pick up some bleeding edge, cutting edge trends that are affecting the market. So I was peeping into some of the research exercises that I've been involved in recent months. And one of the biggest things that comes to me is this business of purpose. Okay? Purpose is the big thing, guys. Just don't ignore it. Half the time we tend to not know too much about purpose. So very quickly, over the next 2 minutes, let me talk about purpose. See, firstly, I think the new society that we live in, the single largest generation that is living today in the world is called the Alpha generation. The Alpha generation is over, the Beta generation has begun. And many of you are Gen Z, Gen X, Y, millennials, because we ran out of English alphabets, we went to Alpha, Beta, Gamma, that's how it's going to go. Now, Beta is already here, and Alpha is the single largest generation living. Now, this generation is not bothered about targets. Targets are so metric driven. Targets are a number. Targets are a greed. They call it greed. This is what people say. So the innermost circle is target. Just outside it, we used to have something called the vision statement of a company. An oft-forgotten thing, which every company has, puts it up on the wall and forgets it. It's so macro that it has no relevance to reality. And then comes the mission statement. Good God, that's even worse. Now, outermost circle of all this is what is called purpose. What is purpose? Purpose is beyond the business. You know, the new society that I'm talking about, the living society of Gen Zs as well as Alpha, they want good karma. It's crazy. But these guys are that much more karmic than many of us oldie marketers, advertisers, etc. have been in the past. So karma drives new societies. You know, from evil companies to good companies. Okay? Do you recognize evil companies? Don't tell me yours is one of them. Okay? From evil products to good products. From evil brands to good brands. From evil solutions to good solutions. This generation is wanting to go there. So the entire thing is, purpose is very important. And purpose, my dear friends, is not a strategy line that rests in the Vice President Marketing's office. Purpose is not a strategy line. Purpose is not an advertising APS. It's not the advertising proposition that you are putting together. Purpose is not a BPS, the brand proposition statement. Purpose is an action in practice. Action in practice, which should be seen by people, felt by people, touched by people, maybe even tasted by people, and heard by people. And therefore, purpose is not oblique. Purpose is real. And I'd like to say that, in the old days, we marketers would say, needs marketing. Needs are gone here. It's out of fashion. wants marketing, higher end. Beyond that, I'm adding a new one. Needs is a very old, statement which used to be there with Peter Drucker. And then comes, wants, desires, aspirations with Philip Kotler. I'm adding a new one. Needs, wants, desires, aspirations, fantasies. Guys, do you have fantasies? Yeah. Do you? Yeah? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
last line on this is that, I tend to say, if you want to reinvent the company you work in, the brands you work in, the products you work in, the solutions you work in, go back, discover purpose for your company. If you want to take one thing back from GBS, it's purpose. And lastly, I quote Mahatma Gandhi, have purpose, the means shall follow.
Okay. On that note, I go to Rohit. Rohit, brand building in the age of imitation, your views on it? Because that's different. We have purpose, we know it's all there. Okay, and coming on to my Prince and Princess story, I don't have the time to continue that. I'll take it out later. But yes, we'll have a quick round of discussion from you on how are brands now, there's an imitation around, okay? How are brands trying to redefine themselves? A quick note on it.
So the thing is really, one of the things I was talking about was really creating these moats, right? So whether it's a cultural moat or it's an emotional moat that you create, because today defensibility of brands on whether it is technology, whether it is product, whether it is on, specific features that the brand actually delivers is absolutely impossible, right? You cannot defend it for an infinite amount of time. But what you can defend on an infinite amount of time is really how the brand connects with. So I'll give you a simple example. I can see it says time's up. Yes. So is if you look at Amul, right? Amul has created, if you remember the topicals, everybody knows about it. It's 58 years, this piece of communication. It's the longest running advertising campaign in the history of the world, right? And that one campaign that has been running is actually Amul is the substrate for culture, right? And that is not replaceable, that you cannot find another. So if tomorrow Amul stops its topicals, culture will notice, right? Saying that didn't happen because somewhere every one of us is so used to participating in that, right? So we have memes about it, we share it, we talk about it. It's a perspective crystallizer, right? So and that actually is really what creates absolutely impregnable moats. I mean, you can't say Britannia can't make better butter. Amul has 90% share of the butter market. Why? After 58 years, there's nobody else who can produce this. It's because of that emotional moat, that cultural moat. Amul leans into culture and has created it over generations. It's the same thing repeated over many times. It's now solidified in our heads as memory, and that is impossible to beat.
Okay, on that note, I have something for Stefano. My last 2 minutes, Kavya, before we wrap up. We spoke about brand building in the world of imitation. Okay, let's talk about in a world where trust is personal and decentralized. What must brands understand about credibility, community, and control before integrating into the content or the creator-led storytelling?
I'll revert back a bit before what they understand about, because it's very important. The brand has KPIs, right? At the end of the day, they pretty much aren't relevant to which channel as much as I'll boil back down to their KPIs. They either want to sell more or they want to build brand awareness. And so these two different goals naturally stem from different strategies. And so at the end of the day, awareness, if you want to build awareness, the most effective way is to build trust and to have network effects lead that conversation for you. And all this feedback loops that happen between the person that's talking about the brand to another person, and all of that just cycles through. So to build trust, you need to embed a story into it. And that's the most effective way to build trust, and consequently to have your brand be as aware and as spread as possible. On the other hand, you have the conversion mechanism. So if a brand wants to convert users into either buy a product, buy a ticket, all of these different conversion mechanisms, these also have their own strategies. So they can run programmatic campaigns, they can run, let's say, sponsorships with referral codes. And so the list goes on and on and on. And everything that we're doing today and everything that we're seeing with AI, with the ability to create not hundreds, thousands of creatives at scale. Back in the days, you had to have one creative agency do the work for a few weeks in order to get a few iterations up and running. So that world has changed. We're now living in a world where attention has shrinked significantly, and the ability to create has also shrunk massively. And so bring these two together, and people are now consuming 50% of our feeds are now AI-generated content. And what does that mean for brand building activities? That means that brands are struggling very hard to build trust in the audience and to be able to either convert or build awareness within their products. And so all of these are challenges. All of these are problems that we have faced and that we're going to continue to face if we don't bring back the core of us and how we connect as humans. How do we connect as humans? We connect with stories. We connect with trusting someone else's opinion. How do you want to talk about a brand? You want to talk about a brand if you believe in it, if you've tried it, if it worked for you, and if you're a brand advocate yourself. And so embed the stories into that. Embed stories into your brands. Have the ability to merge it into cultures, like we talked about. Make it culturally relevant. Make it hyper-localized, and not just spray and pray model that we've seen in the past, where you just throw a budget and pray that it works, and pray that these audiences are resonating. And so the tools have just become so complex in a good way, and so sophisticated, that this ability to zoom in and narrow down on culturally relevant communities is being much easier than what it used to be. And the definition of, also that's the last point, the definition of conversion now is no longer the reach. It's no longer impressions. Definition is not in the volume. It's in, even if you have a very small community that believes in the product, that believes in the brand, will become a brand advocate themselves. And the conversion mechanism is no longer, let's say, impressions at scale. In our case, it's listen-through rate. Yes. It's how long do people stay tuned. It's how long do people give you your attention. Because that today and in the future is going to be the most expensive currency that we as humans are going to be able to provide.
On that note, let's
I just want to, just one line. Yes. It's really about, and just building on Stefano's point, is not about we buy the same thing, we believe in the same thing, right? Okay. So that's what brands are at the strongest.
Okay, I'm going to rob a minute.
Yeah.
Just a minute. See, the thing is, I think we can get carried away at times. This is a contra note with narratives. In the sense that narrative building is a skill, it's an art. Everybody says that your brand must build a narrative. But please be very, very credible in building the narratives. Because a national narrative can be there. Today, India has a great national narrative. Okay? How much of it is solid, how much of it is liquid, and how much of it is gas, we don't know. Okay? I'm being straight. Now, the thing is, when you build narratives, understand narratives have these three quotients. Make sure the gas portion of it is not a bit too much. Build narratives on solidity. Because if you don't build it on solidity, you can fall. Because we live in an age of perma-crisis today. And there's a crisis at your doorstep within your company. Look at gold prices. It's a perma wars, look at scams, look at diseases. These crises are going to hit us. So be careful in the narrative. Even the national narrative, we must be careful to ensure that we don't live up to our tourism name, which we have, slogan, which is Incredible India.
On that note, thank you for the attention with the, the whole room has given us. And I end my story with the saying that the prince and the princess should just do a Netflix binge and do hashtags and live happily ever after. Thank you. Right.
Thank you.